Tuesday, December 6th. I'm Laura Cornfield, and this is IBA News, broadcasting live from Jerusalem. The Knesset has voted to approve the regulation bill in a preliminary reading, paving the way for the legalization of some 4,000 illegal settlement houses, as well as the court-ordered demolition of Amona. IBA's Eilon Aslan-Levy reports on last night's stormy Knesset vote.
National suicide, stage one of an annexation, or both. Amid more shouting than usual, the Knesset last night authorized the regulation bill in a preliminary reading, 60 votes to 49, with Likud MK Benny Begin, the only rebel from the coalition benches, earning him a suspension from the Constitution, Law and Justice Committee as a punishment. Across the aisle, rare agreement on what the bill means. Minister Naftali Bennett of the Jewish Home declared, "Let there be no doubt, the regulation bill is what will spearhead the extension of Israeli sovereignty over Judea and Samaria." Zionist Union co-chair Tzipi Livni agreed, saying today begins the annexation. Opposition chairman Isaac Herzog warned a binational state would spell national suicide. The legislation was co-sponsored by Jewish Home MK Bezalel Smotrich, who gloated from the plenum, "The legal terror of left-wing organizations against settling the land has come to an end." The bill would legalize all housing units built by settlers on private Palestinian land if they did not know it was privately owned and if they received some kind of assistance from the state, including local municipalities. The state would appropriate the land, but the ownership would not be transferred to the settlers themselves. The Palestinian landowners would receive yearly damages of 125% of the value of leasing the land, a lump sum equivalent to a 20-year lease, or alternative land elsewhere. The law would apply both to illegal outposts and to illegal construction in official settlements.
The law is meant to legalize illegal settlement construction in private Palestinian lands and could potentially lead to the expropriation of 8,000 dunams and legalize 55 illegal outposts. More importantly, the legalization of 4,000 housing units on private Palestinian lands and the expansion of settlements as a result could lead to a devastating consequence on the two-state solution.
The bill will not retroactively save Amona, which the court has already ordered be demolished on the 25th of December. Kulana refused to give its blessing unless that clause were removed. The families of Amona will be moved a few hundred meters to 3 plots of Palestinian absentee property on the same hill, where this week Palestinians filed claims of ownership. The bill still needs to pass 3 additional votes and committee meetings before it becomes law, and even then, probably only temporarily. The Attorney General continues to oppose the legislation, warning that it is legally indefensible against both Israeli and international law and cannon fodder for a prosecution at The Hague. The law will inevitably be challenged in the High Court, where it is likely to be struck down, especially if the Attorney General refuses to defend it. But on the ground in Amona, the residents are vowing physical resistance to the Christmas Day evacuation. Speaking to Army Radio today, one resident described the relocation plan as a ghetto. Defense Minister Lieberman is warning the settlers to stand down. But the police are training for a repeat of the violent resistance they faced to the 2006 evacuation of just 9 caravans in Amona. It's dispatching 3,000 border police officers. And the army has already declared Amona a closed military zone in anticipation.
If we come to the 25th of December and we'll have to evacuate, we will not evacuate this place. We will bring here more than 20,000 people who will sit with us in this hill, and the police will have to take us out of here by force. We are not going to walk out of here. This is our homeland. This is where we belong.
Eilon Aslan-Levy for IBA News.
Meanwhile, residents of Amona are feverishly preparing to fight the court-ordered evacuation in less than 3 weeks. The residents have so far erected large tent sites for the thousands of supporters expected to come to their aid in the fight for their homes. They began stocking up on supplies such as food and blankets, generators, beds, and water tanks. Amona settlers said their goal is to be able to house and provide for an expected 20,000 supporters who will come to assist them in their struggle and do all they can to prevent the outpost from falling. Earlier today, Ariel Dad, previously an MK for the far-right National Union Party, told IBA's Eilon Aslan-Levy that the regulation bill doesn't go far enough to advance the settlement enterprise.
The fact that the right wing of the Beit Yehudi, the Jewish Home, and the right wing of Likud really yesterday were so happy when the bill passed the preliminary step, were so loud just to cover the fact that they betrayed Amona. And they really didn't fulfill their promises. Amona will not fall again.
How should the residents of Amona react when the border police turn up on their doors?
They must resist. I hope it will be a non-violent resistance that will enforce the police forces to really remove them one by one, including women and children, from their home. But I hope they won't just whip and mount the buses as some other people did in Gush Katif 11 years ago.
If there are residents who are thinking of resisting the evacuation with violence, what's your message to them?
I think we shouldn't raise a hand or a fist on an Israeli soldier, ever. But they have all the rights to resist the destruction of their home and the deportation from their home.
The Attorney General has said that the regulation bill is indefensible against both Israeli and international law. Your response?
I think that there are other lawyers who think differently, and they have other ways to interpret the Israeli law and the international laws.
How do you respond to the allegation that the regulation bill effectively legalizes the theft of private land?
It's not a theft of private land more than the building of the city of Carmiel was, or the city of Nazrat Illit was. The government took private land from private Arab citizens of the State of Israel in 1954, in 1964, and 250 Jewish settlers in the neighborhood of East Jerusalem are living on land that the country took. It was either a state land from the time of the Jordanian or private Arab land that was taken by the state in order to build neighborhoods for Jews in Jerusalem. So if we say Amona is theft of land, a lot of settlements, cities, kibbutzim, moshavim in the state of Israel are in the same legal situation.
The state comptroller today issued a harsh report relating to the state's level of preparedness in times of emergency and the Home Front Command's readiness against missile attacks. The state comptroller strongly criticized the Home Front, claiming it presented the political echelon with misleading information. The report reveals that the various security bodies and forums, including the National Security Council, the IDF, and the Security Cabinet, failed to hold relevant meetings on the issue of preparedness, primarily pertaining to protection of residents in the north of the country and their fortification. Over a quarter of Israelis do not have shelters or fortified rooms. In a related development, the IDF held a large-scale exercise overnight and this morning in preparation for another possible round of violence with Hamas along the southern border with Gaza. Another controversial bill slated to come up for a preliminary reading in the Knesset plenum tomorrow is the so-called Moazin bill. In an attempt to block the proposed legislation from advancing, Jewish, Muslim, Druze, and Christian religious leaders gathered for a special session in the Knesset Monday, calling on the government to retract the controversial law, which would prohibit mosques in Israel from using loudspeakers to summon worshippers to early morning prayers. The event was organized by Likud MK Yehuda Glick and Zionist Union MK Zohar Baalul, who claimed that the legislation would do more harm than good. Participants promoted dialogue instead of legislation to solve the issue and proposed creating a joint Jewish-Muslim task force that would specifically deal with complaints about loud noise levels from residents affected by it. Rachel Frankel, whose son Naftali was abducted and murdered by Hamas in 2014, along with 2 other teenagers, will take the witness stand today in Washington in front of a federal court. This is part of the Frankel's $340 million lawsuit against Iran and Syria for funding Hamas terrorism. The trial is taking place in the United States, where Frankel is a citizen and therefore able to file suit for damages. In her complaint, Frankel wrote that she gets nightmares from thinking about how scared her son must have been when he realized he had been kidnapped. She said that, as strange as it may seem, filing the lawsuit is one way of combating terrorism. U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry rejected criticism by President-elect Donald Trump, who claimed that the deal signed last year between Iran and the world powers was the worst pact ever negotiated. Speaking from Germany, Kerry insisted the nuclear agreement made the world, including Israel, much safer.
Let there be no doubt anywhere. The region is safer. Germany and the United States are safer. Europe is safer. Israel is safer. And the world is safer because Iran's pathways to a nuclear weapon were blocked, and might I add, with Iran's consent and participation, and with their willingness to fill their plutonium reactor with concrete, with their willingness to take down their centrifuges, to lower their stockpile, to limit their enrichment.
Russia and China have vetoed a UN Security Council resolution that would have demanded a 7-day truce in the Syrian city of Aleppo in order to allow for the delivery of humanitarian aid into the besieged city. Russia claimed that the ceasefire would enable rebels to regroup and strengthen their positions, thus worsening the suffering of civilians. It was Russia's 6th and China's 5th veto of resolutions on the civil war in Syria, which is now well into its 6th year.
They have vetoed the delivery of food to civilians who could starve to death, and in the case of vulnerable children, suffer lifelong effects from severe malnutrition. They have vetoed the lives of innocent Syrians. This action is a death sentence for innocent men, women, and children.
Despite repeated pronouncements against politicization and in favor of dialogue, China has chosen to side with Russia, a party to this conflict. Put simply, they have chosen to veto not because of a lack of consultation, but because of their long-standing, misplaced faith in a despot who has killed nearly 500,000 of his own people.
Back here at home, the Knesset's Labor and Welfare Committee today approved an increase of 360 shekels in the yearly stipend grant given to Holocaust survivors who don't receive a monthly payment of over 1,000 shekels. Some 130,000 elderly citizens in Israel are eligible for the grant, including immigrants from Morocco, Algeria, and Iraq who started receiving it 1 year ago. Chairman of the committee, Kulanu MK, Eli Elualaf, asked representatives from the Finance Ministry to look into the possibility of raising the sum even more. The Treasury vowed to look into the matter and issue a response within 1 month. The Ometz organization held their annual award ceremony last night, honoring former High Court Justice Aaron Barak, as well as Justice Hila Grestel. The Organization for Citizens for Correct Administration and Social and Legal Justice promotes economic, social, and moral equality, and annually honors leading individuals and institutions that exemplify these values in Israel. Several journalists were also among the recipients of the awards, including Israel Television's Igal Ravid, Avi Bar-Eli from The Marker, Channel 10's Hila El-Roi, and Internet reporter Einat Fishbein. The International Day of Persons with Disabilities is being marked this week around the world, and today it is being recognized in the Knesset. According to the Central Bureau of Statistics here in Israel, 18% of the population suffers from some sort of disability. That's an estimated 1,600,000 people. The day is held to raise awareness to people with disabilities and help remove the social stereotypes they face. Israelis who engage in volunteering are more likely, on average, to report life satisfaction and to be optimistic, and are less likely to suffer loneliness. New data from the Central Bureau of Statistics reveals that 1.1 million Israelis were in some form of volunteering last year, including 39% of Haredi Jews, 20% of secular Jews, and 8% of the Arab population. The most common fields of volunteer activity were caring for needy people, education, and health care. 39% of volunteers were busy for up to 9 hours a month, and 40% for over 10 hours a month, with the rest volunteering on an irregular or one-off basis. Residents and visitors in Tel Aviv woke up this morning to a rare sight. A giant golden statue of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu was mysteriously positioned in the middle of the city's Rabin Square outside City Hall. Within hours, the municipality had posted warning stickers on the shiny figure, calling for its owner to remove it from the site, and by afternoon, the statue was unofficially taken down by eager passers-by who wanted a chance to topple the Prime Minister. The huge man-sized figure was actually placed by artist Itai Zelayat, who told reporters he wanted to provoke controversy by placing what he called a mirror that reflects current political developments and that may very well become a reality in the future. He said he intended to remove the statue in any case by the evening. Well, if you've already reached the age of 40, chances are pretty high you may need reading glasses. But this doesn't have to be a done deal, thanks to an Israeli company that has come up with a mobile app that can help you get rid of the spectacles within 3 months. It's called Glasses Off, and it's basically an exercise training program for the eyes. The company says that within 2 to 3 months of disciplined training and a monthly cost of $10, most users won't need reading glasses. Glasses Off says that with the use of the app, the brain trains to process information faster and more effectively in order to compensate for the eye's natural deterioration. The app's founders say that impaired vision improves by enhancing the brain's processing power. More than $15 million have been invested in the startup, and an estimated 1 million people have already installed the app.
Some people that hate being needy for reading glasses, this is the ultimate product for them. The cost is money, they have to pay for it, obviously, and the cost is working very hard for 3 months to get there, because it's not, it's not easy. This is, as I said, this is kind of high-end visual exercises that drain you out. 15 minutes, you have to rest for 15 minutes later. It's very, very difficult. But if you do it, you can get free. You just be free of your need to wear reading glasses, and for a large part of the population, that is something that is very critical for them.
We increase the efficiency of the neurons, so everything becomes to be more efficient and faster, and we improve the processing speed of the brain. And by this, the brain can see more images in the same time, so you can do more processing within the same time. It'll be much more efficient.
Now in its 18th run, the annual winter tour of Comedy for Kobe opens tonight in Beit Shemesh. Last year, thousands welcomed the chance to get out and laugh for a good cause while enjoying hilarious performances from some of America's leading comedians. Proceeds from the event benefit the Kobe Mandel Foundation, established in memory of the teenager who was killed along with his friend Yosef Ishran by terrorists in 2001 while hiking near his home. The foundation runs healing programs for families who have been directly affected by terrorism and acts of war. Tonight's performance in Beit Shemesh is already sold out. The show next travels to Gush Etzion, Jerusalem, Ra'anana, which is also sold out, Modi'in, and wraps up in Tel Aviv on December 12th. Tickets can be purchased at www.comedyforkobe.com. In local money matters, shares were mixed on the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange, while the shekel strengthened in foreign currency trading. Here are the numbers. Turning to the weather, and the forecast is calling for a slight drop in temperatures with a possibility of scattered rain showers. Here's a look at the highs and lows for the next 24 hours at home and abroad. And And that's all for this newscast. Eilon Aslan-Levy will be here tomorrow. Until then, I'm Laura Cornfield wishing you a good evening and shalom from Jerusalem.